Chapter 1 Shinshi. The primary task for the youth is learning. Juda. In September in CC City, the summer heat had yet to fade. The sky was a deep blue, and the clouds in the sky resembled lucky cats. Xia Jiujia walked across the playground wearing thin clothes, looking for the line of students he was about to join. Xia Jiujia was tall for someone from the north, with an athletic build, fair skin, and beautiful features, rarely having any noticeable flaws. However, because his face showed no emotion, he gave off a somewhat distant impression. Today was the registration day for freshmen at our high school, when homeroom teachers would meet their new students for the first time. The playground was packed with people standing closely together. Each class had a long queue, arranged in order of class numbers. Strangely enough, within just a few minutes, the freshmen had already gotten acquainted and formed clusters of chatty groups, creating a cacophony. Xia Jiujia arrived at the end of one of these lines, pulling someone aside to ask, "Excuse me, do you happen to know where the line for class 6 is?" "This is class 7. The person smiled warmly and pointed to his left. "The one next to us should be class 6. "Thank you so much," Xia Jiujia replied with a polite smile, then asked the same question of someone in the adjacent line. After confirming that this long line was indeed where he belonged, he took his place at the back and began observing his future classmates. Everyone waited for the teachers to come and claim them. The teachers of most other classes were already standing at the front of their respective lines, except for class 6, which looked as if it had been forgotten like a neglected child. During the wait, temporary little cliques spontaneously formed, with students introducing themselves. Xia Jiujia, however, being rather aloof, merely observed. Amidst the chatter of the students, one particularly tall boy stood out. Xia Jiujia estimated that the boy was already 180 centimeters tall, with a striking appearance drawing the attention of quite a few girls who were secretly glancing at him. He spoke passionately, surrounded by a large group of people who frequently burst into laughter. At those moments, his lips curved upward slightly. Such a need for attention. Xia Jiujia thought, this is probably what they call leadership. Huh. Suddenly, the handsome boy pointed in a direction and asked, "Whose parent is that?" Xia Jiujia looked over and saw a very intimidating man pacing back and forth. This man had buzzed hair, barely visible stubble, deep creases on his neck, and an appearance resembling that of a reformatory inmate. His face was rugged with wide nostrils and dark circles around his mouth, while black sunglasses shielded his eyes. He wore a black suit over a red shirt, adorned with a thick gold chain, and sharp-pointed leather shoes. Beneath his arm, he carried a folder, from which several sheets of paper could be seen peeking out. Damn. The group of students watched intently, exchanging opinions. Is he from a triad? Could our class have the son of a gang leader? Or maybe even the daughter of a gang boss? It seemed as though the triad member had heard them. His oval head turned slightly toward those whispering judgments, and the crowd immediately fell silent. His eyes were hidden behind the sunglasses, making it impossible to tell whether they contained menace. Then, the triad member adjusted his suit and strode step by step to the front of the line, picking up a small wooden sign that read, "Class 6, and holding it high in the air, accompanied by a megaphone, "Class 6, here. Class 6, here." That group of students momentarily froze in confusion before breaking into exclamations of, "Shit," repeatedly. "He's our teacher. We're doomed." The handsome boy furrowed his brow after a few seconds of staring. "This isn't our fault. Anyone would have assumed he was from a triad. You dare to keep saying. All right. Let's just call him Ironhead. There was this boss in the movies called Ironhead. I think he fits the part perfectly. Ironhead, a Shaolin skill that makes the head rock hard, surpassing any weapon skills." Xia Jiujia thought, a nickname for the homeroom teacher was created in a second. Okay, let's stick with that. Nearby, others pointed to the homeroom teacher of class 7 and asked, "What should we call that one?" The homeroom teacher of class 7 was dressed extraordinarily brightly. Her floor-length green dress was covered in patterns of flowers, yellow, red, blue, and purple, like a garden blooming with various blossoms. But the teacher herself was extremely thin, her prominent cheekbones jutting out while her cheeks were sunken in. Perhaps due to makeup, her face was deathly pale, but her eyes and mouth were big and crimson. The exposed arms appeared frail, almost skeletal, as if a gentle squeeze might break them, helplessly holding the sign. The handsome boy drew out the sound, thinking for about 2 or 3 seconds before a smile bloomed at the corner of his lips. Skeleton flower. She's so vibrant, yet has no flesh. Skeleton flowers are herbaceous plants, native to our area. Wow, those around him asked again, "What about the one for class 8? For class 8? The handsome boy looked up again. Class 8's homeroom teacher was also female, with burgundy hair, a yellowish complexion, and closely packed features where eyes, nose, and mouth all seemed crowded together. After a moment, he chuckled. Ghost-faced flower. What is ghost-faced flower? It's also called viola tricolor. The purple ghost-faced flower looks like her. It has 3 large petals, all purple, with a touch of yellow in the middle, and patterns all squeezed together. You really know a lot. After being praised, the boy gave a somewhat smug laugh. Within 3 minutes, he had given every single homeroom teacher from class 1 to class 15 nicknames, all based on flowers, making it seem as though they'd walked into an animal and plant zoo. Xia Zhuzhe felt like frowning upon hearing this and thought, he's so annoying. Before he could say anything, the line for class 1 began to move. Freshmen started walking into the teaching building, one place where they would spend 3 years of their youth. As class 1 disappeared from view, followed by class 2 and 3 entering sequentially, not long after it was their turn for class 6. Xia Zhuzhe walked into the teaching building too. The building was relatively new, with smooth white walls and unblemished floor tiles. Famous quotes hung on the wall, most about diligence, but these things were hard to actually motivate anyone. All first-year classes were held on the first floor. Following the teacher, they turned right through the door and went straight ahead until reaching a blue wooden door. Xia Zhuzhe lifted his head to take a glance at the classroom sign. It read, Senior 1 to 6, on a whiteboard. Since it was just registration, students sat wherever they liked. Based on his nature, Xia Zhuzhe walked directly toward a seat in the corner by the corridor. To his surprise, he noticed that someone had already plopped himself down onto the spot Xia wanted. Xia Zhuzhe took a closer look. It was the guy who gave all 15 teachers nicknames while still waiting in line. Strange, Xia Zhuzhe thought, for someone so ostentatious, sitting in a corner wasn't his style at all. But it turned out he was overthinking. The other person chose the corner simply because it made it easier for him to talk critically about others. He continued to speak animatedly, with people around attentively listening, occasionally suppressing stifled giggles. Alright, the gangster homeroom teacher stood to one side and spoke up. My surname is Yu Zhongshan, which means I am very loyal and kind-hearted. The crowd. I teach Chinese, and my favorite literature genre is classical works. My favorite novel is Dream of the Red Chamber, and my favorite character is Lin Daiyu. The crowd. Everyone expected him to teach biology, like dissecting chickens or ducks. Apparently accustomed to this, the homeroom teacher said slowly, I've always been unclear as to why I look the way I do. Whenever I go on trips to participate in national top-level teacher conferences, everyone thinks I'm the driver. When I say I'm a teacher at our high school, they are amazed and ask if there are physical education teachers coming as well. Well, enough of this nonsense. Let me now check attendance to see if anyone's missing. He then pulled out a register book, Shenxi. At this, Xia Zhuzhe heard a lazy voice beside him answer, here. So his name was Shenxi. Xia Zhuzhe shook his head, unsure why he even cared. Maybe, for those he didn't like, he paid more attention unconsciously. Lost in thought, Xia Zhuzhe suddenly heard his own name being called. He responded, only to see Shenxi's handsome face lean closer curiously asking, Xia Zhuzhe? Why aren't you named Zaijukai, appetizer, instead? Xia Zhuzhe ignored him. He always considered arguing something utterly pointless, as he had no time to compete with mental patience. Xia Zhuzhe propped his chin and listened to the teacher at the podium speaking. Shenxi asked again, appetizer, where did you study junior high? Xia Zhuzhe still ignored him. Appetizer? He thought, endure, don't respond. In Xia Zhuzhe's mind, everything was ranked first, second, third, fourth, his favorite novels, favorite TV shows, favorite teachers, favorite classmates. Right now, favorite classmate wasn't easily decided, but least favorite classmate topped the list without doubt, Shenxi. Seeing that the other person had no reaction, Shenxi found it uninteresting himself and started examining the graffiti drawn by the second-year students on the walls. After confirming all the students were in the classroom, Yu Zhongshan began to talk about the 7-day military training. Xia Zhuzhe had also participated in military training during his junior high school days, but this time it would take place inside an actual military camp. He took out a notebook and carefully wrote down the assembly time and the items they needed to bring. Shenxi beside him was bored and started observing others. Yu Zhongshan's speech was very brief, quickly wrapping up and dismissing the freshmen to return home. By now, the corridor outside was quite empty. Even the first class that entered the teaching building earliest hadn't finished their tasks yet. Hey! The students continued to express disbelief. Ironhead may look like that, but he's actually a national top-level teacher. Exactly. You can't judge a book by its cover. At this point, a skinny boy interjected, Yu Zhongshan is actually incredibly famous. Among the national top-level teachers, he ranks as one of the best. Oh, my mom works at our high school too. She specializes in teaching the graduating classes, and she knows Yu Zhongshan. Sure enough, you can't judge a book by its cover. Not necessarily. The skinny boy paused for a moment, then said, my mom once said. What did she say? My mom mentioned that Yu Zhongshan was originally scheduled to teach the experimental class, but yesterday, he was suddenly reassigned to our class. Theirs was the rocket class, just below the experimental class. Why? The skinny boy recounted with great enthusiasm, because when having dinner with the graduating students, somehow or other, he got into a fight at the restaurant. With his belly sticking out, he spread his arms wide and shielded the students behind him, shouting, retreat first. I'll hold the line. Later on, he fought 3 people alone and beat them until they begged for mercy. As a result, he got punished and wasn't allowed to teach the experimental class. After a long pause, someone finally let out a sigh. Maybe he truly is a boss. Being the boss doesn't mean anything if you love literature. Who cares if you adore Lin Dayu? Or choose to stay undercover at a school? If anyone dares to provoke him, he will instantly knock them down and make them beg for mercy. Chapter 2 Xia Jiujia. The military training began. On the first day, they practiced military stance. Xia Jiujia did as the drill master instructed, with feet spread at a 60-degree angle, legs straight, fingers pressed tightly against the seam of his pants, chest thrust forward and stomach pulled in. His shoulders stretched back slightly, neck tilted up, eyes gazing ahead, just like a little meerkat. He trained hard, but due to low blood sugar, after half an hour standing there, his vision actually started to blur. He thought, no, I cannot pass out here. I can hold on, I must finish it. If no one passes out, then certainly not me. To fall behind as if I'm the weakest and exit first would be unbearable. Though outwardly peaceful, Xia Jiujia was internally competitive, proud, someone who would perish without being first. Even for military training, he wanted to be number one. However, whether to faint or not is something that willpower cannot determine. Xia Jiujia gritted his teeth, enduring and enduring. After about 10 seconds, he lost consciousness and fell down with a thud. The September sun was still fierce, and he had been heat-stricken. Xia Jiujia was the third person in the second row. When he fainted, he directly fell onto Shenxi's back, instinctively grabbing hold of Shenxi's clothes. Shocked, Shenxi quickly caught him and shouted, "Pickled peppers with chicken feet, are you all right?" With a shake, Xia Jiujia dazedly opened his eyes but still felt unwell. Shenxi turned around and firmly hugged Xia Jiujia's waist, noticing how skinny he was. Xia Jiujia's knees went weak, dangling in Shenxi's embrace. After a while, he grabbed Shenxi's shoulders with both hands and struggled to stand up. His t-shirt crumpled, exposing his slim, pale waist dotted with fine sweat. Given his obvious actions, the drill master naturally saw this and yelled, "Third person of the second row, rest by the roadside. Third person of the first row, help your classmate get to the shaded area." Shenxi held Xia Jiujia's waist firmly and helped him to the edge of the training ground. He sat Xia Jiujia down on the curb to rest and then sat next to him with his long legs sprawled out, watching their classmates continue to train as if nothing had happened. He also waved to some buddies. Not achieving perfection, Xia Jiujia was very upset. With a cold look, he had an extremely bad expression and stayed quiet, sullen and introverted. Shenxi took a round candy from his pocket, placed it in his palm and said, "Pickled peppers with chicken feet, you have low blood sugar, eat this candy, it'll make you feel better." Xia Jiujia looked up at Shenxi. "Take it. The girls in class 7 gave it to me this morning." He didn't even see clearly who it was when several packs of snacks were shoved into his hand. "Thanks." Tempted by the blood sugar boost, Xia Jiujia extended his white, vein-visible hand, accepted the candy, tore open the wrapper, threw it into his mouth, and immediately felt a surge of sweetness filling his mouth. Shenxi's candy was very sweet. It tasted like fruit. After resting a bit in the shade, Xia Jiujia felt somewhat better and said, "I want to go back. This time, I am sure I can last." He wouldn't believe that he couldn't endure. "Ah." Shenxi was shocked, "No way, pickled peppers with chicken feet, why go back?" Xia Jiujia asked, "Why do you call me pickled peppers with chicken feet?" Shenxi stared at Xia Jiujia and slowly replied, "Side dish. I love eating pickled peppers with chicken feet." Shenxi had noticed early on how Xia Jiujia's hands were particularly delicate and beautiful. Xia Jiujia said, "My name is Xia Jiujia, not side dish." "Not that different." "Very different." Xia Jiujia wanted to show he didn't care, but failed. "I am human, not food, especially not something you particularly love eating. Don't call me those 4 words anymore." "Oh. Such a nuisance." Xia Jiujia thought. But since he was eager to return to the line, he stopped arguing and returned to the group, working hard to stand all the way until the end. Feeling he had made up for his failure, it was also considered the completion of his task. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the training ended. Xia Jiujia returned to the dormitory for half an hour, got acquainted with a few classmates, and then ran with everyone to the cafeteria for dinner. They still queued up, standing beside a few tables, waiting for the command to sit down and start eating. The food wasn't great, but not too bad either. Some wild vegetables usually unseen were surprisingly tasty. After resting for 2 hours until 8 o'clock, someone told them to take a shower. The camp leader shouted from the stairs, "Our bathroom is under renovation. There's a slight problem with the water supply system." No one dared to ask any questions. When the students turned on the shower heads, they discovered what a slight problem really meant. The water from the shower heads was fluctuating between hot and cold. Either ice cold or boiling hot. The cold water was so frigid it could freeze anything, and the hot water so scalding it could cook. Someone asked the leader, "Shenxi, Shen brother, what should we do? Should they take an ice-cold bath or a boiling hot one?" That was the question. Would they rather feel cold or scalded? Shenxi's physique was impressive. He was 16 but already broad-shouldered, well-chested, narrow-waisted, and long-legged, radiating youth and vitality, with just a hint of boyishness. He directed them, wash with basins. When the cold water comes, fill half a basin, when the hot water comes, fill another half, then squat down to wash. Have you ever seen cats or dogs bathe? It's the same. His hand moved in the air as if he were an authoritative leader. So everyone had no choice but to stand naked, following Shenxi's advice, waiting for the cold water to come, filling half a basin, then waiting for the hot water and filling the other half. If it didn't alternate, they could only wait there, a bunch of students exchanging blank stares. During the wait for the water changeovers, they had nothing to do without computers or cell phones, so they idly looked around. Shenxi, who stood out physically, naturally drew all kinds of compliments from others, even his male appendage was certified as being #1 in class. But Shenxi moved closer to Xia Jiujia and said, "Hey, your skin is so white." "Xia Jiujia, I know my skin is white. So tender too." Shenxi grinned, "Not pickled peppers with chicken feet, more like crystal jelly. If you don't want me to call you pickled peppers, then let's say crystal jelly." Xia Jiujia thought Shenxi was going to drive him crazy again. He merely wanted to read books and study problems. Shenxi continued chattering, "The sauce has soy sauce, vinegar, sugar, and chili." Xia Jiujia said, "I'm not crystal jelly either." However, while saying this, he was standing there looking whiter than white, with skin as transparent as crystal jelly itself. Shenxi replied, "I think you're pretty similar." Xia Jiujia asked, "Then what are you?" Shenxi stared at him, matter-of-factly saying, "I'm human." Xia Jiujia suddenly felt completely powerless. There was no reasoning with Shenxi. Plus, since crystal jelly sounded better than pickled peppers with chicken feet, he picked up his small basin and went to shower in a corner. Throughout the entire showering process, Shenxi found himself constantly glancing at the crystal jelly. Crystal jelly squatted in the corner, dousing water over himself. By the time he finished washing his face with the towel and walked away holding the basin, his butt cheeks were bouncing up and down. For some reason, Shenxi kept thinking about hugging crystal jelly by the waist that morning. The latter's body had been soft, hanging comfortably on his arms. Although our middle school held their military training at a camp, it wasn't large enough for everyone to sleep in proper rooms, which were reserved for leaders and teachers along with a few select students. Most freshmen had to sleep in meeting rooms. There were 2 meeting rooms in the camp, one for boys, one for girls, incredibly spacious, with echoes even when speaking. Each meeting room's long tables were combined into 6 groups, creating 6 huge bunk beds spanning the entire meeting room. 30 students could lie down on each bed, perfectly accommodating one class of boys or girls. Xia Jiujia discovered, other parents had prepared mosquito nets for their children, but he didn't have one, almost as if he weren't truly related to his own family. Everyone used their backpack straps to tie the 4 corners of the mosquito net, looking for places to hang them. Straps crisscrossed the meeting room, making it look like a spider's nest. Since everyone else had mosquito nets except Xia Jiujia, and because he was especially attractive to mosquitoes, he woke up in the middle of the night covered in bites. He wore long sleeves and pants, covering his face as much as possible, but mosquitoes inevitably found ways in. Xia Jiujia couldn't help but wonder, why must they inject venom when they suck blood? Couldn't they just drink the blood directly? Thus, early the next morning of the military training, Xia Jiujia's whole body itched. Northeastern mosquitoes were ferocious, causing swollen bumps everywhere. Moreover, due to his late-night long-sleeve strategy, the mosquitoes didn't have many options, so they ended up biting his face. One cheek had 3 large lumps and there was another prominent, clear lump right on his lower lip. A big one. Xia Jiujia felt bloated, sore, and itchy all over. It was extremely uncomfortable. Shenxi slept nearby and immediately sought Xia Jiujia upon waking. Seeing the 6 medium-sized lumps on his face and the large lump on his lips, he clearly hesitated before genuinely exclaiming in amazement, "You're amazing. Does having the Big Dipper pattern on your face mean you're practicing some special kung fu?" Xia Jiujia said, "Your families all provided mosquito nets, but my grandmother didn't prepare one for me." However, though upset, when Xia Jiujia spoke, the extraordinarily bright lump on his lower lip would rise and fall with his words, shimmering strangely, bouncing slightly. Shenxi tried to hold back, but failed. Ha ha ha. Xia Jiujia turned and left. Clearly, ignoring Shenxi was the right choice. This person's greatest strength was also his greatest weakness. He had a strong sense of pride and intensely disliked being looked down upon or laughed at. Wait, Shenxi quickly grabbed Xia Jiujia's arm and said, "My mosquito net is big. I'll retie it tonight so it can cover your bed too. What do you think?" Xia Jiujia replied, "I don't think much of it." Shenxi made a tisk sound. On the second day of military training, in the morning, they practiced turning right, left, and various formations. The instructor taught, turn your head 60 degrees to the right. Use tiny steps to move around in all directions. Look at the cheek of the person on your right but not beyond them. Xia Jiujia was the third from the second row while Shenxi was the third from the first row. When practicing right alignment, everyone had just turned left once. As a result, Xia Zhoujia's alignment reference became Shenxi. Xia Zhoujia took things seriously, staring intently at Shenxi's side face with big bright eyes. At one point, the align to the right instruction seemed to last forever as the instructor didn't give the order to look forward. So Xia Zhoujia kept staring at Shenxi's face. Unbeknownst to him, while he stared, Shenxi suddenly twisted his neck against protocol, looked left instead of following the others who looked right, and their gazes met. Xia Zhoujia thought, what's wrong with this guy? Shenxi said, don't look at me like that. For some reason, after Shenxi was stared at by Xia Zhoujia's dark, glossy eyes, he felt restless all over, and again recalled how Xia Zhoujia looked naked under the mosquito net earlier. Xia Zhoujia thought internally, who else am I supposed to look at if I'm not looking at you during right alignment? But since it was military training, strict discipline applied, and Xia Zhoujia didn't want to be criticized publicly by the instructor. He kept his mouth shut, pressing his lips into a straight line, squeezing out the words between clenched teeth, you're sick, only pronouncing the word sick. Sick. Shenxi was startled and turned back, deep in thought. Even after such conspicuous actions, they hadn't been scolded yet. After lunch, they moved on to practicing marching and walking in step. The instructor gave another left turn command and had the class walk in rows. Each time, Xia Zhoujia would bump into Shenxi's hand. Shenxi complained again, don't keep touching me. Xia Zhoujia. Completely unable to understand. And so, the exhausting second day came to an end more or less. Xia Zhoujia increasingly regarded Shenxi as insane. Not allowing him to look, not allowing him to touch, 100% lunacy. It was clearly unwise to argue with someone like that. Before sleep, Shenxi hesitated for a moment before forcefully unraveling the backpack strap securing his mosquito net. He then adjusted it slightly backward, covering Xia Zhoujia's pillow and blanket as well. When Xia Zhoujia returned after washing his face, Shenxi crossed his arms, slightly raising his chin, come in. Huh. Sleep with me. Someone nearby teased, damn, brother Shen, sharing a mosquito net? That's gay. Shenxi impatiently replied, gay my ass. Xia Zhoujia hesitated. In that pause, he experienced a sudden pain in his lips. Weighing the situation, he realized it would be extremely foolish and petty to dismantle Shenxi's carefully set up mosquito net, throw it back, lie among mosquitoes to tough it out, and get bitten all over again. And surely, if he did so, Shenxi would mock him relentlessly come morning. Therefore, Xia Zhoujia said, thanks, lifted the mosquito net, climbed inside, and lay down beside Shenxi. Lying there together made Xia Zhoujia inexplicably recall those ancient costume dramas. Shenxi had bad sleeping posture. With his long arms and legs stretched out, forming a Thai character, Xia Zhoujia could only squeeze to one side. He secretly took out his phone and browsed social media feeds. After registration day, Yu Zhongshan had created a class group and added everyone on WeChat, so Xia Zhoujia could see Yu Zhongshan's posts. 2 hours ago, Yu Zhongshan, reading Dayu burying flowers again still makes me cry. In the comments, flowers fall and fly, filling the sky, their red fades, their fragrance breaks, who pities them? Xia Zhoujia thought. Yu Zhongshan's here too. They say he arrived riding a motorcycle this time, wears sunglasses every day, and strolls around camp like he belongs to the mafia in a leather jacket. Flipping through more, 3 hours ago, Yu Zhongshan saw Dayu teaching Xianling poetry today. Indeed, Chao Shuaqin was a masterful writer. In theory, mobile phones weren't allowed during military training, but Xia Zhoujia just quietly scrolled without responding. Shenxi asked, Crystal Jelly, are you ready to sleep? Don't F***king call me Crystal Jelly. A matter of principle, no compromise allowed. I fed you, I let you sleep here, remember my favor. Then I realized, Shenxi continued, all you said was, thanks. What else should I have done? Why don't you call me Brother Shen? For some reason, he particularly wanted to recruit Crystal Jelly into his camp. Xia Zhoujia quickly said, Brother Shen. Shenxi deliberated for a while before finally giving an evaluation, it feels insincere. Xia Zhoujia thought the other party was being too picky. He turned over and stared at Shenxi's eyes in the moonlight, softening his tone as he said, Big Brother Shen, Senior Brother Shen, is that okay? Let's go to sleep, shall we? His unspoken implication was, stop being such a damn nuisance. Shenxi hesitated and then said, that's fine. Xia Zhoujia turned back around. At night, Shenxi felt somewhat restless again. Crystal Jelly had been rescued from the swarm of mosquitoes, now lying there in just a tank top and shorts, his white and tender skin glistening under the moonlight spilling through the uncovered windows. It really did look like a piece of crystal jelly, tempting one to take a bite. Strange. The military training lasted 7 days and 6 nights, during which Xia Zhoujia felt constantly scrutinized and oppressed by Shenxi. However, given the favors received, twice in total, it would be inappropriate not to show gratitude. On the last day, parents arrived at the campsite to bring their children home. Everyone was tanned black except Xia Zhoujia, whose skin remained white and tender as ever. Xia Zhoujia's grandparents were the ones picking him up. Shen-shi noticed and, upon seeing Xia Jiujia wasn't being picked up by his parents, cast a curious glance. When Xia Jiujia bid everyone farewell, Shen-shi lifted his gaze, his dark eyes shining brightly like stars, and said, "See you on Monday. Little jelly." Chapter 3, The Monthly Exam, Part 1. The first day of school began with the flag-raising ceremony, which was also the most important flag-raising ceremony of the academic year. A few handsome members of the school's flag guard team entered the field. After the flag raising, a senior student from the second year, regarded as a god of learning, stepped up to give a speech under the national flag. This person's name is Yin Li, a dominant scholar in the second year. Whenever he took an exam, the second place wouldn't go to anyone else. He has dark skin and looks like an iron tower, making one naturally think of the animal, bear. Yin Li's speech topic was called, Killing Procrastination, focusing on methods to combat procrastination. On the registration day, when rumors about the homeroom teacher were being shared by a skinny boy, he now started gossiping about their school's top scholars instead, acting nervously excited. Monopoly-level scholar, how great, those two in the third year have it tough. Shen-shi asked lazily, how tough? Truly tough. The other shook his head vehemently, showing a distressed expression. See, one of them was also a Monopoly-level scholar, but suddenly another genius transferred to our school. Holy crap, there can't be two tigers on the same mountain. Later, things got exciting as they kept disliking each other and were always locked in fierce competition. Shen-shi said, "Stop messing around with me. Bro Shen, don't be impatient." The skinny boy continued telling his story. One day, their math teacher had a moment of madness and left a problem from the World Math Olympiad competition. Who could solve that? The original, study god, spent 2 full hours and solved half of it. Then his desk mate, who was ranked in the top 5 in grade, and was neighbors with the new study god, ran into him in the elevator. In order to make his mom, who was constantly nagging about the child next door, impressed, he taught the new study god the half he'd learned from the original study god. Realizing everything, the new study god spent another 2 hours solving the rest of it, then, out of gratitude, taught it back to that girl. The next day, the teacher didn't discuss the problem, but the original study god secretly peeked at the latter part from his deskmate's test paper and understood it too. Later, these two study gods, let me laugh for a bit, from then on looked at that girl differently. It seemed, only she could match their IQ, perfectly complement each other, and solve problems together, so the math Olympiad was destined to be their connection. They even invited her to dinner and movies. They saw her as a rival. And one day they found out the truth, ahaha. Shen-shi asked, then what? What else after that? Cut, boring. What did you expect? After all the gossiping ended, Yin Li's speech titled, Killing Procrastination, finally came to an end. A representative excellent teacher and the principal of our middle school spoke respectively, mostly urging everyone to work hard in the new semester and not waste their youth or their prime years. Following this, everyone lined up and walked back to the classroom. There was no morning self-study on the first day, and the homeroom teacher arranged seating. Yu Zhongshan organized the boys into one line and the girls into another, arranging seats according to height. Boys sat together, girls sat together, and front and rear seats were mixed genders. However, because class 6 of grade 1 had more boys than girls, by the time they reached Xia Jiujia, the girls had reached the end of the queue, leaving only one girl, Xia Jiujia herself. So, Yu Zhongshan assigned her as Xia Jiujia's desk partner. Thus, the two became the only students in the class with a same-sex desk partner. There were 8 rows of seats in the classroom. Xia Jiujia sat in the 7th row. His female desk partner struck up a conversation. I'm Yi Mengmeng. What's your name? Yi Mengmeng had very white skin, almost like daylight, black hair, bright red lips, big eyes, and was quite beautiful, except for a few scattered freckles on her cheeks. Xia Jiujia's voice was gentle, Xia Jiujia. His personality was proud, and he usually didn't establish intimate relationships with people easily. However, he looked clean and pure, and there was a sweetness in his tone, so those who didn't know him well generally couldn't perceive his arrogant side. As they were chatting, from the last row, his back seat, someone strolled over casually with a book bag slung loosely over their shoulder. Xia Jiujia. Indeed, old adversaries met. As the ancient saying goes, they were completely honest but didn't deceive themselves. Shen-shi was tall, so sitting in the last row was normal enough, but unexpectedly, he just happened to sit right behind Xia Jiujia. Shen-shi kicked the chair a few times until he found a satisfying angle, then plunked himself down carelessly, as if his arms weren't working. After 2 seconds, Shen-shi stretched his long legs, lightly kicking the chair below Xia Jiujia twice with a sound of duang-duang, leaning closer, crystal jelly. Surprised or not? Xia Jiujia turned around, his soft voice slightly irritated, whatever. Saying this, he pulled his chair forward a bit to distance himself from Shen-shi. After 2 long bell rings, the curtain on high school study life officially opened. On the very first day, Xia Jiujia discovered. All the teachers of grade 1, class 6, were abnormal. The first period was Chinese, taught by Yu Zhongshan. Yu Zhongshan, already abnormal in general, seemed even more peculiar when compared to others. His movements were extremely unpredictable, whimsical, and stylish. He moved forward and back, near and far, left and right without any fixed pattern, like a master. And the quirkiest thing was that whenever he had a question, he would casually slap the table next to him and say, "You answer." Thus, all the students in the class anxiously watched Ironhead's footwork, hoping he wouldn't suddenly appear, which frightened them to no end. In the first period, Ironhead Yu Zhongshan didn't lecture on any texts but instead used a lot of Chinese language knowledge to impart principles to his students. "Through thousands of hammer blows we mine from deep mountains," Ironhead Yu Zhongshan recited, just as he reached Xia Jiujia's desk. With a swing, he slapped it with a pa sound, "You answer." "What is the next line?" After saying that, he took a few backward steps and returned to his spot. Xia Jiujia discovered he'd lost his memory. The poem Ode to Lime, he had memorized it, it came easily to him. A Ming Dynasty great poet Yu Qian wrote this allegorical work about perseverance despite hardship. But now, a phrase danced around his tongue, yet refused to leave his lips. Shenshi saw that Crystal Jelly didn't know, so he immediately whispered a cue, 10,000 rivers and mountains are treated as commonplace. It sounded somewhat familiar. Xia Jiujia responded, "Yes, 10,000 rivers and mountains are treated as commonplace." "Wrong. Sit down." Ironhead Yu Zhongshan said, "It's as if the fierce flames burn away trivially." Meanwhile, the previous line to 10,000 rivers and mountains is, "The Red Army fears not the difficulties of a long march," from Mao Zedong's The Long March. The entire class started laughing out loud, ha ha ha. Shenshi gave another kick under Xia Jiujia's chair, "Sorry, I got confused." He really hadn't meant to do it intentionally. But given the similarities of thousands, tens of thousands, and ordinary, it was easy to mix them up. Xia Jiujia stayed silent. He hated Shenshi. To him, nothing mattered more than being the number one. Being amazing should be a habit, and being admired should also be a habit. Even if only Shenshi laughed at him, it wouldn't have been an issue, but now, Yi Mengmeng, who sat beside him, the student in front, and even Shenshi behind him, all of them, every single person in the classroom, were laughing at him. He wanted to kill Shenshi as easily as overcoming procrastination. Actually, if Shenshi had truly mixed things up, there'd be no reason to get angry. The main problem was, Xia Jiujia believed that based on Shenshi's usual antics, this could have been done on purpose. After class, Shenshi nudged Xia Jiujia again, ball you. "Don't be mad, I really got confused." Xia Jiujia thought for a moment and ignored him. Shenshi paused silently, then suddenly stood up and walked out. He only returned when the bell rang again, tossing 2 packs of snacks and a bottle of drink onto Xia Jiujia's desk, saying, "Here." Shenshi said, "I looked it up online. According to rules, cell phones shouldn't be carried around, but as long as no one found out, they could be used." Xia Jiujia asked, "What did you look up?" "How to apologize so others stop being mad." Shenshi added, "The internet says there are 3 methods, buy. Xia Jiujia shoved the items to the back of the table, "Buying things? Isn't that how you appease girls?" "Right." Shenshi admitted openly, the internet only teaches boys how to appease girls and vice versa. It doesn't teach boys how to appease other boys. Then why treat me like a girl? Why don't you act like one yourself? Using methods for boys to appease girls to apologize felt infuriating. Why couldn't it be reversed? Girls might be cute, but no one wants to be grouped into something they're not part of. Treat myself as a girl? Shenshi hesitated for 2 seconds before slowly replying, "All right." After speaking, Shenshi extended his long fingers and undid 2 buttons on his shirt, subtly revealing his beautiful collarbones. Both sides were quite pronounced, it seemed like you could balance coins on them. Xia Jiujia jumped, "What are you doing?" Shenshi supported his chin with one hand and pulled his collar wider with the other. "The internet says, boys appease girls, buy. Girls appease boys, strip. It always works." Xia Jiujia was speechless. Never seen someone so shameless. From over there, Shenshi kept talking, "Isn't this what you wanted? Alright, time for class, teacher's here." This period was math. The teacher was a middle-aged woman with an extremely fiery personality, carrying a large triangular ruler which she liked to use to poke at students who misbehaved. For relatively minor infractions like whispering back and forth, she would prod with the 90-degree corner. For more serious issues like sleeping in class, the 60-degree corner got jabbed into them, and as for flagrant offenses such as deliberately skipping classes, she'd forcefully stab using her sharp 30-degree angle. With everyone dressed lightly in September, those prodded let out grimaces of pain. Yet it was rumored that geometry teacher had yet another ultimate weapon, a big compass. The 3rd class was physics taught by a cool older sister, who appeared relatively normal. The 4th class was chemistry conducted by a muscular man nicknamed Sans Ho King, the champion of last year's provincial amateur Sans Ho tournament. During winter and summer breaks, he traveled to Shaolin to study martial arts. In the first lesson, to raise his classmates' interest, he started with several experiments. Watched as Sans Ho King took a magnesium strip, wiped off its oxide layer with sandpaper, then held it with a crucible tong. One hand shielded the lower half of his face with a textbook while the other extended long to light the magnesium. He turned his head sideways, only peeping from the side, squinting both eyes as he gradually moved the magnesium closer. And when it finally touched the alcohol lamp, Sans Ho King let out an screamed, dropping the magnesium into a dish and jumping 3 meters away. The classmates below. The magnesium remained lying still in the dish, nothing happened. Disappointment showed clearly on Sans Ho King's face. After gathering courage for a few seconds, he tried again, but ended up screaming and jumping 3 meters away once more. This time too, the magnesium just stayed peacefully in the dish, with absolutely nothing happening. Here, Sans Ho King sighed in relief, packed up the magnesium, saying, "Looks like our school bought counterfeit substandard magnesium strips. We won't be able to do this experiment today." There were 2 continuous English classes in the afternoon. The English teacher always had a sense of wrongness. During her lessons, anyone who looked up at her even once was considered someone eager to answer questions, and because she had a very caring character, she would certainly help that person achieve their goal. As a result, within a few minutes, no one dared to look up at the teacher anymore, all eyes fixed firmly on their textbooks, making the classroom atmosphere unbearably oppressive. Geography and history were relatively normal, being handled by the homeroom teachers of class 7 and 8 respectively, known as Skull Flower and Ghost Face Flower, Shenxi's second and third nicknames in our high. However, regardless of anything else, our high was the city's key school, and class 6 was also an important class. Teachers were exceptionally skilled, and Xia Jiujia felt that each could explain problems crystal clear. Xia Jiujia usually studied quietly. He listened attentively in class, even for things he already knew, listening carefully since the teacher might offer different methods or introduce other knowledge. Shenxi noticed from behind that Xia Jiujia was always looking at the podium, amazed inside, not knowing what there was to hear, while Shenxi himself was playing around wildly at the back. Xia Jiujia's deskmate, Yi Mengmeng, also loved studying immensely, and even more fervently so, she read books during breaks, lunchtimes, and even at night while eating. Shenxi gave her a nickname, Ferocious Learner. Every time Shenxi said, "Hey, ferocious learner, there's something," Yi Mengmeng's eyes would twitch slightly. What made the students of class 1 to 6 fully realize how high school differed from junior high was their first physics and chemistry test. When the teacher lectured about mechanics, everything seemed understandable enough: time, displacement, velocity, uniformly accelerated linear motion, free fall. But no one in the room ever expected how these concepts could actually translate into solving real-world problems. Everyone in the top class froze in bewilderment. Completely clueless as to how to apply the theories into practice, they stared blankly at the problems on the test paper. And among the puzzled ones, Shenxi stood out quite differently. Only 20 minutes after the exam began, he was already playing with a canister. It belonged to a girl classmate used for fortune-telling, specifically for calculating romantic destinies. Press a button and answers popped out. Shenxi, feeling bored, borrowed it for research. Seeing Shenxi in high spirits, the physics teacher walked down from the podium with a displeased expression and asked Shenxi, "Have you finished your test?" "Yeah," Shenxi casually replied, "I'm done." The cool older sister then asked, "Do you understand it?" "Huh?" Shenxi responded. She explained, "I instructed everyone to choose reference books daily to do practice problems, which I'd check randomly. Everyone else picked classic tutoring materials, like 5 years of college entrance exams, 3 years of mock tests or Wang Hoxiang's complete interpretation, except you, who handed in a problem a day. All are multiple choice questions. How will that allow you to master it?" Shenxi said, "It works. You're already playing around instead of checking your answers. There's nothing to check." The cool older sister sneered and yanked the test paper out to start inspecting Shenxi's answers. The more she looked, the more shocked she became. She couldn't find a single mistake by the end. She slammed the paper back on the desk and said, "All correct. You can keep playing," then turned and walked away. Xia Jiujia, sitting in front of Shenxi, naturally heard this conversation and was somewhat surprised. He had assumed Shenxi was just a major troublemaker. Shenxi continued his game. He saw a question on the canister: "When will my first love begin?" He pressed the button, and candidate answers flashed repeatedly before finally stopping at, "Within 1.5 years." Shenxi pressed the button for the second question: "How far is my true love from me?" The answer scrolled quickly again, and then stopped at a number, less than half a meter. Damn! Shenxi cursed. Half a meter, it could only be his deskmate, the person behind him, or even someone nicknamed Crystal Jelly, with no fourth option. All were males, not even Yi Mengmeng diagonally across qualified as being within half a meter. How absurd. Wrong, so wrong. Chapter 4, The Monthly Exam, Part 2. October. The first monthly exam for the freshmen arrived as scheduled. The school randomly assigned exam rooms, allocating seats according to the pinyin of surnames. It was rumored that from next time onward, seating would be arranged based on the previous test scores, so students with poor academic performance wouldn't have the chance to copy high scores easily. Xia Jiujia's surname is Xia, starting with the letter X, so she was assigned to a room near the back. Seeing only one classmate who she wasn't very familiar with, this person didn't talk much, neither did Xia Jiujia. In our high school, there were 30 classes in the first year, so the probability of being in the same exam room as someone you know was actually quite small. As the invigilator removed the seal and opened the brown paper large envelope, they spread the test papers like a fan. Their fingers swiftly flipped through to count them and evenly distributed them to the first row of each of the 4 groups. With a quick glance, Xia Jiujia felt there were no difficult questions. She flipped the test paper back to the front and started answering in order. She worked quickly. Mentally reciting, the correct answer is, yeah, it's C. Using her fingertip, she tightly gripped the fountain pen and made a mark before each question. While answering, she had confidence. Question by question went smoothly, with almost no hesitation or getting stuck. Xia Jiujia estimated that she could score around 136 for this Chinese test. Even if the essay got docked 8 points, the major reading comprehension lost 2 points, and the 2 minor reading sections lost 1 point each, there was still one multiple choice question she wasn't entirely sure about. Let's assume it was wrong, that makes 136. Alright, only the essay left. There's plenty of time. But just then, Xia Jiujia suddenly felt dizzy. Trying to steady herself, it didn't improve, an intense pain surged in her abdomen, making her instinctively lean over the desk. It was as if a hand was grabbing her intestines, twisting them together while constantly pulling, causing those knotted places to move. Xia Jiujia pressed her hand against her stomach, but the pain wouldn't subside. She put down her pen, pressing hard on her abdomen and rested her forehead on the edge of the desk, bending forward slightly for a while. It seemed to get better at some point, but just as she picked up her pen again, her body was rocked by another bout of discomfort. Even her stomach started hurting. What's going on? She raised her hand. The invigilator walked over and asked, what's the matter? Xia Jiujia countered, can I go to the restroom? Can you hold out? The invigilator immediately saw the paleness of her face, terribly pale, and abruptly revised their response, never mind, go ahead. Thank you, teacher. Bending over, Xia Jiujia quickly rushed out of the exam room and bolted into the restroom. It hurt so much. After quite a while, Xia Jiujia's legs went numb, and she walked out of the stall, staring blankly as she washed her hands. However, just as she stepped out of the restroom, she suddenly felt a wave of nausea rushing up her esophagus. Supporting herself against the wall for a moment, she turned and leaned over the sink, vomiting everything she'd eaten for breakfast. Her throat burned fiercely, especially near her heart, it felt like fire was scorching it. Feeling slightly better afterward, Xia Jiujia rinsed her mouth, cleaned the sink, and slowly returned to the exam room to continue her test. However, this relief didn't last long. After writing a couple hundred words, she experienced vomiting and diarrhea again. She felt absolutely terrible. But she couldn't just sit in the classroom ignoring it. Going back and forth several times, when the bell rang, Xia Jiujia had managed to write only 400 words. As the teacher collected the test papers, she desperately scribbled furiously, trying to finish in time, though the result was barely decent. Afterwards, she didn't want to pack up and leave. She sat alone on the chair, utterly dejected. Each trip to the restroom took up about 10 minutes. The composition was worth 60 points, and with this, she might get only 30, leaving her score at 114. First place is definitely gone now. She felt awful. Already weak, she now felt even weaker. It was as if something was lodged in her throat, making it hard to breathe. At noon, Xia Jiujia didn't eat lunch, she dared not eat anything. Instead, she drank a little water and returned to the exam room to prepare for the English and math tests. But things worsened, the rest of the day was worse than the morning. Her entire body shivered with cold, her limbs powerless, and it seemed she had already developed a fever. Nausea and diarrhea came in waves again, preventing Xia Jiujia from completing the English listening portion. The entire second section remained unanswered. As for math, she didn't finish either. No. I need to go to the hospital. She knew her father would be home right now, quite rare, considering how often he usually traveled. Her body was too weak. Just walking to the school gate had been a challenge, she had stopped to rest by the roadside multiple times. Struggling outside to hail a taxi wasn't easy. Upon arriving at the hospital, it was diagnosed as food poisoning caused by bacteria. Blood tests showed over 20,000 white blood cells. Anti-inflammatory injections and 4 drips were administered immediately. It was raining on the way home, and Xia Jiujia shivered as if he were shaking a sieve. He only felt the wind drilling into his bone marrow, with every bone hurting, but he could not distinguish which one it was. The raindrops seemed to weigh 1,000 jin each, hitting his scalp and making it go numb in waves. When he got home and took his temperature, it had already shot up to over 39 degrees Celsius. His whole body was very weak, and he didn't know why. He slept tightly wrapped up. The next morning, his temperature was still at 37.5 degrees Celsius. Better, Xia Jiujia said as he walked into the living room to pick up his school bag, I'm going for my exam. What exam? Xia Jiujia's father, Xia Yonghe, who was 45 years old, was cooking in the kitchen. We are not taking it. What? I will ask for leave. Not going to take an exam? Xia Jiujia thought, I, absolutely, do not agree. Even if Chinese, English, and mathematics did not go well, physics, chemistry, geography, and history absolutely couldn't be missed. Moreover, the first three weren't that bad either, they still offered a chance to see where he would end up. So stubbornly he stated, "I'm fine, I can take the exam, I don't feel uncomfortable at all." "You are not allowed to go," Xia Yonghe said. "Your health is more important. You go out like this, what if it gets worse? It's just a monthly exam." Being healthy is most important, Jiujia. Don't worry your dad." Xia Jiujia stopped talking. His mother passed away due to illness early on, and his father was often away. Whenever his father said such things, Xia Jiujia was completely helpless. On the other side, Xia Yonghe had already taken out his phone to call for leave. Xia Jiujia sat in front of the dining table, drank milk, ate eggs and bread, feeling strongly about wanting to go to school. He couldn't help but start pondering, what kind of questions might come up in the first monthly exam. Would it be very difficult? A challenge to everyone else? Or would it be rather simple? What physics problems could appear, and chemistry? Would they ask for experimental methods? Or... After breakfast, he went back to lie down in the bedroom. When the clock struck 9. Inside the school, the physics test had already started. Xia Jiujia imagined, the invigilator would place a test paper on his desk. Then around 9:15, realizing he wasn't there, they would collect the paper, fill in his name, and with one swift stroke write down, "absent." At the time, when the paper results came out, it would show a 0 score. Consecutively 4 subjects with 0 scores. The other 3 wouldn't be great either. By the time the grade-wide rankings and class-wide rankings came out, the last name listed would be Xia Jiujia. No, maybe not the very last, but second to last, third to last. And the top first place would belong to someone else. He could only watch as the other person smoothly achieved first place in the small monthly exam, establishing their academic genius, status and accepting everyone's admiration. Xia Jiujia lay in bed lost in random thoughts and eventually cried from frustration. Tears slid down, and he quickly wiped them away with a pillow towel. This was the first major exam since entering high school. It could test whether he would still hold the top rank in our high school. He had been looking forward to this for a month, just wanting to know this result. He wanted to prove himself, to keep proving himself. Our high school was the best high school in the province, producing top scorers year after year. Being number 1 here truly counted. Xia Jiujia realized the sorrow and pain those diligent athletes experienced when injuries prevented them from participating in competitions. Imagine if a champion athlete finally entered adult competitions, aiming to stun everyone with incredible skills, only to be injured and withdraw right as the competition began, their mood would definitely hit rock bottom. Lying bored, Xia Jiujia secretly took out the questions and tried working on them, but then his father appeared as if with telepathic sensing, and pushed the door open with a loud bang. Like a master thief, he swiftly confiscated a copy of 5 years of college entrance exams and 3 years of simulation tests. The teachers of our high school had miraculous speed when grading papers. By the day after the exams ended, all the scores were already available, the rankings prepared, for the class, for the entire school, everything ready. Teacher Yu Zhongshan was really considerate. He only posted the top 30 students of the class and the top 900 students of the year on the classroom blackboard. As for the bottom 30 students of the class and the bottom 1100 students of the year, he cut the rankings into individual slips of paper, handing them directly to each student by name. Yu Zhongshan said, students whose scores were not good this time should work harder. Hua Luogin once said, diligence makes up for clumsiness, hard work breeds talent. This time I didn't humiliate you, but during the midterms, I may post the entire ranking list. Xia Jiujia looked at his own subject scores, Chinese 114, English 114.5, Math 124, Physics 0, Chemistry 0, Geography 0, History 0. 56th place in the class, 5th from the bottom, grade-wise, he wasn't ranked. The year rankings only went up to 1,200 students. There were a total of 30 classes in grade 10 of our high school, approximately 2,000 students. Xia Jiujia wasn't dead last because even in the advanced class there were people who had paid their way in. Clutching his fists tightly. Next to him, Yi Mengmeng was also gripping a small slip of paper, clearly showing that her results were not ideal. After a while, Yi Mengmeng crumpled the slip into a ball, shoved it into her pencil case, and with her lips pressed tightly together, she pulled out a workbook and started working on problems intently. Xia Jiujia said, Yi Mengmeng, are you alright? As desk mates, he knew that Yi Mengmeng had been given a nickname, Study Beast, by Shinshi, but her scores were actually quite average. After hearing about the physics test dialogue, Yi Mengmeng knew Shinshi was smart, so she often asked questions from Shinshi. However, none of the questions were particularly difficult, and sometimes after asking similar questions before, when they changed slightly, she wouldn't know how to solve them anymore. As Yi Mengmeng worked on her problems without looking at Xia Jiujia's face, she stated, 46th place in the class, 864th place school-wide. Xia Jiujia said, that's not bad, after all, we're in the rocket class. Not good enough. Yi Mengmeng said, at this rate, I won't be able to get into a 985 university. Last year our school had a 30% admission rate for 985 universities, so I need to be among the top 600 at least. That's still pretty close. Yi Mengmeng shook her head and asked, and you? To make Yi Mengmeng feel better, Xia Jiujia didn't explain much and simply replied, not good either, I didn't break into the top 30. Then let's work hard together. It had only been 1 month since the start of the semester, and Yi Mengmeng wasn't very clear on Xia Jiujia's overall performance. Usually, she wouldn't sneak peeks at Xia Jiujia's answers during class either. Alright. Xia Jiujia also walked over to the board to check the rankings. He wanted to see who the number 1 student in the school was, his rival. Then, at the very top line, he saw Shenxi. Chinese 136, English 144, Math 150, Physics 100, Chemistry 100, Geography 98, History 96. Xia Jiujia, he didn't know much about Shenxi's situation. Xia Jiujia himself had actively chosen not to join the experimental class because its curriculum focused heavily on competitions, but he had little interest in joining such contests. Instead, he preferred using his spare time to read books he enjoyed. The rocket class of our high school had teaching resources comparable to the experimental class. Last year's top scorer in the province came from the rocket class of our high school. Shenxi leaned back on his chair twirling a pen, as if uncaring. A large group of students surrounded their leader, shouting excitedly, Big Brother Shen, you're amazing. Big Brother Shen, we bow to your brilliance. Shenxi smiled smugly and kept spinning his pen, don't worship me too much. Another voice asked, we haven't seen you studying much. Shenxi responded, because I don't waste my time. A always slightly slow-witted classmate across the aisle named Zhong added, Bro Shen, even Ironhead probably never thought the top student in the year would be in our class, huh? Who could have guessed? You're usually like that, who would think you're a genius? Hearing this, Shenxi frowned, he did think of it. Before the monthly exam, he sacrificed a student as an offering to heaven. Because the other party was completely confused, they followed up by asking, sacrificed who? Shenxi said, you. You're already dead, now shut up. Oh. Shenxi looked up and saw Xia Jiujia. Suddenly remembering something, he retracted his long legs and approached Xia Jiujia to ask, Crystal Jello, what rank are you at? You're always studying. Xia Jiujia was in a foul mood and didn't want to talk with him. Shenxi got intrigued, pushing away a group of juniors and quickly rushing to the front podium like wind, shoving aside a group of classmates, then began scrolling down through the classroom rankings. Scanning down to 30th place. His gaze fell straight on Xia Jiujia with an expression full of disbelief, staring blankly. He returned to his seat and continued sitting there. About 2 minutes later, Xia Jiujia suddenly felt someone tapping on his back. He turned around. Why was Shenxi calling him? Shenxi, slightly leaning forward on his desk, looked at Xia Jiujia with bright eyes. His wide-eyed astonishment spread all over his face. Crystal Jello, are the questions you practice fake or something? Xia Jiujia turned back, sliding his chair further away. Behind him, Shenxi sounded mournfully reflective, murmuring sorrowfully, what can I do, I've realized the gap between you and me is really big. Chapter 5, Monthly Exam, Part 3. The monthly exam was over. As usual, each subject teacher explained the test papers. Xia Jiujia used the fragmented time to finish both blank physics and chemistry test papers he prepared for the morning. He really wanted to see if he could also score a perfect 100. If not, then it would mean that he truly wasn't as good as Shenxi from the seat behind him, which was absolutely unacceptable. Yu Zhongshan asked all students to prepare a mistake notebook where they copied down all wrong answers from major and minor exams, reviewing them regularly to firmly engrave all key points in their minds. He said, everything on the tests is important, everyone needs to fully understand it. All students followed this instruction, and class advisor Yu Zhongshan personally checked each one. When checking Shenxi's notebook, Yu Zhongshan just stood there, saying nothing. Xia Jiujia turned back. He saw that others had used exquisite notebooks, but Shenxi took a tattered book, ripped off the first half of it along with its cover, leaving only a few pages at the back. Then, perhaps feeling it was too fragile to be exposed like this, Shenxi kindly attached a magazine cover as a makeshift cover. However, in the place where notebook should have been written, it read 6 large words, mysterious female killer. Moreover, Shenxi didn't bother to copy the mistakes. Instead, he tore the test paper directly and, plop plop plop, glued the incorrect questions onto it using glue, without even tearing the edges neatly. Yu Zhongshan said, this is supposed to be a mistake notebook. Mistake, notebook. Shenxi casually flipped through his work and said, 10 pages here. Teacher, I think, for me, it's a bit wasteful to use a book. Yu Zhongshan was speechless and walked away. As a big shot, he wasn't very focused on details anyway. For instance, after finishing grading each test, he always crumpled up his own test paper and threw it away. Xia Jiujia heard Shenxi's seatmate ask, don't you have a new notebook? Shenxi replied, no, too lazy to go out of the school gate to buy one. The boarding school only has a small convenience store in one dormitory building, always overcrowded with bustling students pushing and shoving around. Oh. Xia Jiujia thought Shenxi's character was indeed very carefree. He himself pursued perfection in everything, and he had never seen anyone like Shenxi before, so this definitely opened his eyes. Then Shenxi remained quiet all morning. Xia Jiujia was too busy listening attentively to answers from each subject and didn't bother paying attention to Shenxi. He felt there were no difficult questions, but still feared the unexpected. Not until both the physics and chemistry teachers finished explaining all problems did Xia Jiujia finally confirm that he too scored dual perfect scores. In the afternoon, Shenxi started acting up again. While the math teacher explained the test, Xia Jiujia listened carefully, but hyperactive Shenxi couldn't stay still for a moment. As the math teacher was explaining a particular problem, Shenxi suddenly burst out in the corner, "This method is truly, come over and see how I solve this." 2 minutes later, there were already quite a few people around Shenxi, leaning forward to watch him solve the problem. Shenxi gestured wildly, scribbling on scrap paper, "See, do this, then this." A group of people marveled, "This method is so simple." Even Yi Mengmeng couldn't help but turn her head. Xia Jiujia pondered over his own test paper for 2 or 3 minutes, roughly understanding what Shenxi was referring to with his method. The math teacher was extremely annoyed, but with Shenxi being the top student in the entire school, she couldn't say much. She just threw a piece of chalk, then addressed the whole class. "What I've just explained is the conventional approach. There are other methods, but due to time constraints, I won't explain them further." She managed to salvage her dignity. Her aim with the chalk piece was precise, yet Shenxi sidestepped it effortlessly. Xia Jiujia thought, encountering Shenxi was such bad luck for the freshmen at our high school. However, Xia Jiujia also noticed that after seeing Yi Mengmeng's disappointment with her results, Shenxi refrained from calling her "study beast" for an entire day, instead unusually addressing her as Yi Mengmeng. Before evening self-study, Xia Jiujia ate dinner with friends in the cafeteria and returned to the classroom, only to find his seatmate Yi Mengmeng absent. Glancing around, Xia Jiujia discovered that Yi Mengmeng was chatting with a close friend in another aisle. But Xia Jiujia's eyes widened. The troublemaker from their class, Zhang Yang, was standing very, very close behind Yi Mengmeng. Leaning down, he lightly sniffed her neck as if completely entranced. Zhang Yang kept his eyes downcast, with his lips only 5 or 6 centimeters away from Yi Mengmeng's. Yet, Yi Mengmeng was completely unaware and continued smiling cheerfully. She was an energetic girl whose gloom from the monthly exam failure had already passed. With her braids tied, her long, fair neck exposed. Her close friend was busy scribbling something, speaking while unaware of the odd situation. Xia Jiujia. He knew that Zhang Yang probably liked Yi Mengmeng. Mengmeng had a lively personality, was pretty too, with skin white as a fluorescent light. It was normal that someone liked her, and classmates in the class were also spreading rumors about it. However, Mengmeng should not like him back, and she once expressed her distress privately. Yi Mengmeng only wanted to study and pass the 985 exams, no interest in romance, and certainly wasn't in the same league as gangsters. Zhang Yang was somewhat handsome, tall and slim, with big double-lidded eyes, a high nose bridge, thin lips, and an oval face. But perhaps due to limited intelligence, his gaze seemed somewhat vacant, straight but lacking in the vitality a young person should possess. This is obviously someone taking advantage, Xia Jiujia thought. Although Zhang Yang was a delinquent, he didn't usually cause trouble in class, and people mostly ignored him. Instead, the true troublemaker in class 6 of grade 1 was probably Shenxi. Xia Jiujia saw what was happening and regardless of whether Zhang Yang was a delinquent or not, raised his voice crisply, "Yi Mengmeng, come back." "Huh?" Yi Mengmeng looked up at Xia Jiujia, a hint of confusion in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Xia Jiujia called again, "Just come back." "Is there something?" Xia Jiujia nodded, "Yes." "All right." Yi Mengmeng said goodbye to her friend and left. Xia Jiujia locked gazes directly with Zhang Yang, sensing the instant displeasure and anger in Zhang Yang's eyes as soft warmth left. They coldly stared at each other for a moment before Xia Jiujia mouthed, "Stay away from my seatmate." This was pure provocation, and Zhang Yang suddenly narrowed his eyes, snatched the iron pencil box belonging to one of his underlings, and, clang, threw it at Xia Jiujia. He wanted to threaten Xia Jiujia into silence and stop interfering. The object flew fast, making a clattering sound. That underling didn't dare to say a word. The pencil case did not hit Xia Jiujia. Instead, it struck the corner of Shenxi's desk behind him and with a bang landed on the ground, its appearance still intact. Shenxi got startled and looked up at the source. Xia Jiujia froze for a second, immediately bent down to pick up the long metal pencil box, stood up abruptly, and took 2 firm steps until he was separated by only one desk from Zhang Yang, in another aisle. Lifting his head, he hurled the cold object directly at Zhang Yang. With such pride embedded deep in his nature, how could Xia Jiujia back down? He took 2 more steps forward, determined to hit Zhang Yang. Zhang Yang blocked with his hands, wincing in pain as he tightly held onto his right knuckles. Your mother, wait for me there. Zhang Yang realized the situation and hurriedly stepped around the table towards Xia Jiujia's side, his towering frame brimming with rage, clearly intending to beat Xia Jiujia until bruised all over. In Zhang Yang's eyes, this incident was intolerable. How dare Xia Jiujia meddle and strike first? Yi Mengmeng was also stunned. Xia Jiujia. She had never seen such a spectacle, finding it somewhat intimidating. Just as Zhang Yang was about to start punching, Shen Shi, who was playing with his phone in the last row, suddenly spoke, "Stop causing trouble, K's sake." He looked up at Zhang Yang, his gaze intense, clearly choosing to side with Xia Jiujia. Zhang Yang immediately pointed at Shen Shi, his already large eyes bulging even bigger. "Shen Shi, don't interfere." "But I have to." Shen Shi gave him a few looks, then lowered his gaze back to the game. "Hey, you, where's my blade? Keep it ready for me." He was talking to the boy diagonally to his right and across the aisle. The boy had terrible grades, entered the advanced class through back doors, and always tried to show off his toughness by carrying a switchblade to school. Several teachers weren't aware of it. The boy lending the knife smiled, pulling out a switchblade wrapped layer by layer in paper. "It's not that, you're going to slash someone." Shen Shi didn't take it. Glancing at Xia Jiujia, who was confronting someone like a little crystal jelly leopard cub, he went back to his game, not sure yet. He found the crystal jelly very interesting. So skinny and delicate looking, yet daring enough to stand up to hoodlums. Although he hadn't seen the full sequence of events, he could infer it was roughly correct. Zhang Yang's focus shifted from Xia Jiujia to Shen Shi, momentarily unsure whether Shen Shi was serious about joining forces or not, and therefore hesitated to act rashly. Fortunately, just at that moment, the evening self-study bell rang, and the figure of the English teacher appeared at the classroom door. She was still outside doing something, possibly having forgotten something, and asked a student to fetch it for her from the office. Zhang Yang muttered another threat, pointing at Xia Jiujia. "You'll regret this." Xia Jiujia returned to his seat and sat down like a good child. Shen Shi cursed. "I was on track for 5 consecutive kills. His collision messed up my skill casting." Zhong, who sat across the aisle from him, had always been a bit of a fool. Seeing Shen Shi so engrossed in fighting, even nearly getting to the point of drawing a knife to slash someone, he leaned closer and stared at the group battle on the screen, asking curiously, "Shen, what are you playing? I've never seen it before." Zhong was 170 centimeters tall but weighed 270 pounds, he was fat. Shen Shi once joked, "Your name isn't good, it sounds like I'm heavy," again and again. Technically, he shouldn't have been in the last row, but because the corner had more space, he requested to sit there. Shen Shi replied, "It's downloaded online, available in stores." "What's it called?" Zhong asked. "Huh." While releasing another skill, Shen Shi said, "It's called 100-word slash." "Got it." Zhong secretly pulled out his phone, though feeling it might be off, he still clicked download. He played a couple of rounds, then frowned and asked Shen Shi, "Nope. Shen, this keeps making me choose English words. It's different from what you're playing." Each screen displayed a word, requiring him to select the corresponding picture with the correct definition. If he chose wrong, it would make strange noises. Shen Shi said, "Once you master 100 words, you can play the game. There are rewarding games afterward." After memorizing 2 more, Zhong finally realized something was off, turning off his phone as he said, "I don't believe you, you're bullshitting. What is your game really?" After failing to deceive him, Shen Shi smirked, pressing his left thumb on his phone and releasing another skill, the screen becoming colorful as he finally achieved a pentakill. "You'd better not play. Just yesterday, my parents gave me a mixed doubles beating. Do you want that to happen again during midterms?" Chapter 6, Monthly Exam, Part 4. Zhang Yang sat down, his fingers throbbing with pain. Xia Jiujia had struck hard. Zhang Yang's knuckles had collided with something hard, breaking the skin in a couple of places and drawing blood, as if to remind him how embarrassing the situation had just been. He'd never seen anyone so outrageous. Initially, Zhang Yang only intended to issue a threat. He was, after all, harboring feelings for Yi Mengmeng. But Xia Jiujia had looked at him with disdain and said, "Stay away from my desk partner," acting as though he were some chivalrous knight while treating Zhang Yang like a Lothario. He hadn't expected that Xia Jiujia would not be intimidated by his verbal threats, but instead strike first, leaving Zhang Yang injured and bleeding. If he did nothing, then there was no point in being on the streets. Moreover, perhaps out of jealousy, anyone who had a good relationship with Yi Mengmeng became someone he wanted to teach a lesson to. Zhang Yang shook his right hand a few times, tore off a strip of paper from the test paper, wrote a line with his still somewhat stiff hand, folded the note carefully, and passed it on. Xia Jiujia received the note, opened it, and found it read. "After tomorrow's dinner, 6th floor restroom, let's settle this. I have 5 guys, you can bring whoever you want. Xia Jiujia glanced up at Zhang Yang. The other party lifted his chin lightly. Yi Mengmeng was attentively listening to the class, noticing none of this unusual behavior. Xia Jiujia looked down again. This meant either a fight or forcing him to bow and apologize. The place chosen was particularly nasty, the school's 6th floor restroom. Lying face down on the bathroom floor would undoubtedly be an immense humiliation. It was clear that they intended to teach him a lesson, but they were pretending to follow street rules, where disputes were resolved by gathering groups and fighting, or apologizing and backing down. Of course, if he didn't show up, it would give them a legitimate reason to confront him openly and beat him. Xia Jejia turned his head and nodded slightly, indicating his acceptance. The next day, they reported it to the teacher. The principal burst into the 6th-floor restroom with the teachers, confiscating 5 sticks and scolding all the students involved, including Zhang Yang, some from grade 2, and some from grade 3. They also informed all the parents. This incident left a deep mark between them. During the reprimand, Shenxi poked Xia Jejia and asked, "Does this have anything to do with you?" Knowing that Yi Mengmeng was watching him anxiously, Xia Jejia shook his head and said, "No, I don't know anything about it." "Oh. They're here for a grudge match with someone else." "Oh." Yi Mengmeng wasn't very sharp, she believed whatever others told her. Fearing a beating, Xia Jejia stayed in school after the reprimand incident. Even over the weekend, Xia Yonghe went wandering around again, and there was nothing for him to do at home. With more teachers and classmates around in school, those little hooligans, however audacious, wouldn't dare start fights in classrooms, on the playground, in the canteen, or in dormitories. About 2 weeks later, it was evening study session again, and before that, Xia Jejia went with 3 roommates from the neighboring dormitory to eat dinner at the snack street behind our middle school. They went to a small restaurant inside a relatively small neighborhood. Just as the dishes were served, trouble arose back at the dormitory. Several dorms, including the neighboring one, had been robbed. The other 3 rushed back immediately. Xia Jejia, on the one hand feeling extremely hungry, and on the other not wanting to waste the food, said he'd try eating it himself. He didn't think he'd be that unlucky, running into trouble right on the way back. But reality proved, he really was that unlucky. After finishing the rice noodles, wiping his mouth and stepping out, he hadn't even exited the neighborhood when he came face to face with Zhang Yang and a few other hooligans at the front of building number 2. Xia Jejia. It was as if he were cursed. It felt exactly fated, precisely when the neighboring dorm was stolen from, precisely when these small-time hoodlums appeared. Sometimes it's just like that. After an accidental event happens, the more you worry about encountering something worse, the more likely it is to happen. He wanted to pretend as if nothing happened and walk past them. Unexpectedly, Zhang Yang hesitated for a moment, then spoke anyway. "Him. That one who can't keep his mouth shut." "Which one?" Zhang Yang replied, "The one who reported us to the school." The other 3 were surprised for a moment, then grinned. "Oh, we were worried about bumping into him." Xia Jejia. His hand had started moving to scratch his neck, but paused mid-air, frozen like a half-open flower. Xia Jejia thought, truly, hooligans were just hooligans. Zhang Yang normally didn't cause any trouble in grade 1 class 6, he seemed to respect the teachers and good students, sleeping quietly during class. However, once offended by someone, he held a grudge and retaliated, unwilling to use logic and reasoning, solving everything with violence as if living in an animal society or the primitive era. The leader, a blonde-haired one, grinned wickedly and said, "Now backing down won't help you." Xia Jejia said, "I'm not planning to back down." He observed carefully. None of these people should have a dagger. According to what he knew, sticks and knives were okay as they carried great intimidation but less actual harm, the only truly scary thing being a dagger. So, it wouldn't lead to any particularly serious consequences, not enough to interfere with the midterm exams. At most, he would get beaten up, leaving him bruised and bloody, requiring a trip to the hospital for medication, followed by recuperation, no big deal. He was still contemplating if there were any other ways out when suddenly, that blonde one kicked straight into his chest. In the blink of an eye, there wasn't time to think about much. Xia Jejia had an inherent pride, determined to win. Even if he couldn't win, he would give it his all. Shenxi wanted to eat bibimbap and ambled towards the restaurant. There were plenty of options in this neighborhood, one of Shenxi's preferred choices. Before they could leave the neighborhood, Shenxi suddenly saw a group of people fighting ahead. He frowned, unwilling to get involved. He was a good student, although he used to always get into fights when he was younger, it didn't mean he enjoyed brawling. However, upon closer inspection, Xia Jejia, nicknamed Crystal Jelly, was among them. Shenxi took 2 quick steps forward, then slowed down in surprise. He saw, the blonde one kicking with his right leg while Crystal Jelly not only didn't step back but moved forward instead, grabbing the other's ankle with his right hand and forcefully pushing it away. He used his awkward right hand to push to the right instead of his left, forming a straight line with the opponent's right leg. This caused the blonde one to twist halfway around, unable to face Xia Jejia directly or continue attacking with kicks and punches. Xia Jejia stepped forward half a pace and threw a hook punch with his left hand at the opponent's chin, followed by 2 more hooks in the same spot. The opponent lost his footing, stumbling backward a few steps and steadying himself with his hands on the ground. The group stared blankly, completely astonished that Xia Jejia, looking so thin and weak, could actually fight. Taking advantage of their confusion, Xia Jejia bent over, picked up a few red bricks nearby, and hurled them fiercely, not targeting anyone directly. The bricks shattered upon impact, raising clouds of choking dust, quite impressive and exuding an air of intimidation as if showing off his power. Coincidentally, there were some bricks and cement piles lying around in the neighborhood. This was too fierce. Shenxi was dumbstruck too. Crystal Jelly's face clearly deceived everyone. Hey! Shenshi quickly joined the fray, and soon after, the opponents retreated, leaving a final threat according to international conventions before departing. Xia Jia patted down his school uniform, checking his entire body to ensure he hadn't been injured. Man, Crystal Jelly, Shenshi was incredulous. How, are you so good at fighting? Xia Jia remained silent for a moment before saying, actually, I've never fought outside. What do you mean? Never fought outside? Right, they didn't react fast enough, and I caught them off guard. Xia Jia explained to Shenshi, when I was in elementary school. I was once beaten by older students. They wanted to snatch my pocket money, but I refused to give it to them, so it ended badly. At the time, they said, you're as skinny as a bamboo stick, it'd be harder to kill a chicken than to take you down. So, that night when I got home, I signed up for classes and practiced Muay Thai until the end of summer in the second year of junior high school. For over a year now, I haven't had time to go back. Recalling those words, killing a chicken would be easier than taking you down, had deeply hurt Xia Jia. His face battered and bruised, he went home defiant, insisting on learning martial arts. After thorough consideration by his parents, they decided that Muay Thai suited Asians well, allowing one to throw knee and elbow strikes effectively. In the gym, Xia Jia trained with great seriousness and ambition. Even though it was amateur training, attending only 1 or 2 sessions per week, Xia Jia still had a clear understanding of basic techniques, such as how to defend against direct kicks, which gave him an advantage from the start. However, his blood sugar levels were always low due to some physiological reasons, making endurance battles dangerous as he might pass out. Regular exercise kept things stable in the past, but recently, being busy with entrance exams set him back to the previous state. Shenshi looked at Xia Jia in shock. Xia Jia said, if we continued, things probably would have gotten ugly. Fortunately, you happened to pass by just then. Xia Jia said, I really haven't fought outside before. This was also like a test for me. After 6 years, he finally disproved the phrase, killing a chicken would be easier than taking you down. Shenshi stared wide-eyed and asked, just because you couldn't swallow your pride? Yeah, that's right, Xia Jia shifted the topic to Shenshi, what about you? You seem pretty capable too. Just roughhousing, leftover habits from childhood. This is nothing, in junior high, I once participated in gang fights where each side sent 30 people. Xia Jia thought seriously for a moment and asked, how do you fight like that? Do you have uniforms to differentiate sides? Shenshi burst out laughing, nope, it's random. How is it random? Everyone's cunning. They just see who gets knocked down first and then kick that person together, very few are honest enough to seriously fight. Xia Jia. Alright, let's go back to the evening study session. Alright. Not sure if it was due to fighting together, but Xia Jia and Shenshi's relationship improved significantly. Shenshi mulled over Xia Jia's fiery temper as they walked, getting a vague sense that he would likely be the one shouldering more worries and burdens in the future. Sighing, Shenshi said, little Pafreeze. Having been called so many times, Xia Jia actually responded. In the future, when you're facing multiple opponents, just apologize. Xia Jia replied firmly, no. Alright, Shenshi hadn't really expected Xia Jia to agree anyway, so he said, then hurry up and call me for help next time. Little Pafreeze. Xia Jia replied after a pause, okay. Hey, Crystal Pafreeze. As they approached the school gate, Shenshi finally remembered what had been nagging at him as odd. Turning his head to look at Xia Jia, he curiously asked, when you were younger, you were so determined. Someone said you were as thin as a bamboo stick, it'd be harder to kill a chicken than to take you down, and you trained in Muay Thai for 5 years to prove them wrong. So how come now, when it comes to studying, you've lost that drive? In other words, why are you so bad at studying? Chapter 7, The Competition, Part 1. When Xia Jia heard Shenshi ask curiously, then why, up to now, have you lost that drive in your studies, he didn't answer. There was no point in telling the top student of the grade, I missed a few exams, so I'm actually not that bad, because Xia Jia knew too well, indeed, couldn't be clearer, that in the eyes of the top-ranked student, there wasn't much difference after that. Moreover, without evidence, it was quite immature and ridiculous to verbally declare, I might be even stronger than you. Besides, Xia Jia himself did not know whether he was better than Shenshi. With only 20 days left before the midterm exams, the truth would soon reveal itself. For now, all he could do was to hold this grudge. After finishing the fight, the two slowly made their way back to school. Shenshi hadn't eaten yet, but he thought about helping someone all the way, he needed to make sure the Crystal Jelly girl didn't get intercepted by those hooligans again on her way home. So he turned around, hands in his pockets, looking pretty cool. As they walked, Xia Jia suddenly stopped and quickly turned his head to look at a girl passing by. Shenshi also turned. Is that Crystal Jelly? Following Xia Jia's gaze, he saw a short-haired girl laboriously dragging a bicycle. She probably was a junior high student from grade 7 or 8 at our middle school who didn't have evening study sessions. She held the bike handle tightly with one hand while trying to lift the rear seat with the other 4 fingers, allowing the front wheel to move on the ground. It was evident that she was struggling greatly, biting her lips and needing to pause every few steps to rest. Xia Jiujia walked over and asked, "Do you need any help, classmate?" He glanced down and noticed that the girl's fingers gripping the back seat had already turned purple. Ah. The girl put down the bike. "Someone stole my bicycle last week, but I found it somewhere else and just took it back. I'm planning to take it to a repair shop to unlock it." The bicycle was red, though due to the recent end of the rainy season, the seat was covered with multiple plastic bags bearing Walmart's small chrysanthemum logo. Xia Jiujia nodded thoughtfully, I have some photos. The girl said, unlocking her phone and showing them pictures. In the photo, it was still summer, and the girl was riding the bicycle. The repair shop is far away. And as a girl. Xia Jiujia paused for 2 seconds and said, I'll help you carry it there. Without another word, he took action, grabbing the bike handle and seat. He estimated the girl to be around 12 or 13 years old, and the bicycle weighed several dozen jin, quite heavy. The girl exclaimed, eh. Hey, Shenshi asked, Crystal Jelly, do you know her? No, just lending a hand. Shenshi widened his eyes in surprise. The girl was also a bit confused, as if she never expected such kind-hearted people. Xia Jiujia started to leave, with Shenshi following by his side. Evening study starts soon. We won't make it back in time. You go back first. You'll make it. No. Xia Jiujia said, I'll jump the wall later, it will work out. There was a back door at school connecting to a small market behind, but it remained closed year-round. The school required all students to use the main gate, so anyone wanting to visit the small market had to walk 3/4 of the way around the school. Shenshi said, then I'll jump the wall later too. They quietly walked for a while. Shenshi noticed that the repair shop was still quite far away. Jokingly, Shenshi said, let me carry it. No need. However, Shenshi's left hand had already placed over the middle of the bike handle, covering Xia Jiujia's soft, pale hand exactly. Due to the grip, Shenshi's 5 warm fingers curled around Xia Jiujia's delicate ones, giving the feeling that the smooth skin beneath his touch resembled silk. Both Xia Jiujia and Shenshi froze momentarily upon this realization, staring at each other briefly. Then Shenshi proceeded to pick up the rear seat of the bike, allowing Xia Jiujia to silently retract both his hands and transfer the bike to Shenshi. It was strange, Xia Jiujia thought. Shenshi was often crude in speech but quite mysteriously helpful every time he needed help, like when he fainted during military posture training, got bitten by mosquitoes, or was blocked by hooligans, and now. It was truly an interesting kind of fate. Upon dropping the bike off at the repair shop, neither lingered long and headed straight back to school. On the way, Shenshi asked incredulously, Crystal Jelly, are you too kind-hearted or something? It's just a small effort. Shenshi looked sideways at the person beside him. Shenshi, Xia Jiujia rarely spoke so many words at once. You're great at studying, good at fighting, excelling in everything. It seems like you don't really need anyone else. But, in this world, not everyone is like that. There are always people who need help. It's not troublesome, making life easier for others isn't great. Xia Jiujia indeed thought so. As the forever first-place winner, Xia Jiujia felt that he was somewhat blessed by heaven, and therefore, he should help heaven complete its mission. Their existence wasn't merely for themselves. He was usually proud and didn't like talking, not because he looked down on anyone, but because he didn't know what to say to classmates. Exchanges between equally matched souls were rare and precious, which led him to prefer reading books and newspapers more. Shenshi, surprisingly, did not contradict this time, staring blankly at Xia Jiujia. Xia Jiujia continued, you don't need to be overly showy. No need to display confrontation to prove how smart or strong you are. Shenshi still tilted his head to look at Xia Jiujia. The sunlight had dimmed, gently spilling onto Crystal Jelly's face, casting a warm light on his glossy black eyes and gilding his long lashes with gold. It looked very nice. Shenshi scrutinized Xia Jiujia some more, finding this, Crystal Jelly, quite interesting, especially lively. He is good, indeed excellent, but never weak. TSK, plus, he's good-looking too. White, tender, soft, smooth, bouncy, just like Crystal Jelly. Though his grades might be slightly worse. Passing by the milk tea shop in front of the school's back door, Shenshi smelled the aroma of fried chicken fillets from the store and suddenly couldn't move his legs, saying, I haven't eaten yet. Haven't eaten. Xia Jiujia was somewhat surprised, saying, let me treat you. What do you want? Fried chicken. All right. Xia Jiujia leaned his head against the window and beckoned to the owner, boss, 1 plain milk tea, 1 fried chicken fillet. Hurry up, please. Thanks. The boss was efficient, quickly handing the items over through the window. Shenshi took it and waited until they got to the back door. He handed the food to Xia Jiujia, gave a quick dash, grabbed both railings, leapt, and smoothly stepped on the nearly person-high metal bar before flipping over. Xia Jiujia, after all, had been trained. Although his body wasn't as fit as Shenshi's, he was pretty agile too. Unexpectedly, our middle school's dean of studies appeared out of nowhere. Oh no, jumping the wall was always fine before. The Dean of Studies was bald, carefully combing his few remaining hairs to the back of his head, revealing a large face and shiny forehead. He yelled, "Who gave you permission to jump over the fence? Why jump over the fence? Now answer me." Then pointed at Shenxi, shouting, "And you're not even wearing a uniform. No badge." Our middle school required students to wear uniforms, but Shenxi had just casually thrown an outerwear on top, with a pair of jeans underneath. The Dean of Studies glared at Shenxi again, adding, "And your coat's unbuttoned. So sloppy." Our middle school also forbade students from leaving their coats unbuttoned. Normally lazy to explain, Shenxi said carelessly, "Because I wanted to return to school." "You don't know it's prohibited to jump over the wall?" Shenxi said, "I didn't know." "How could you not know?" Shenxi said, "Because I'm stupid." "Nonsense." The Dean of Studies roared angrily, "What class are you in?" "What class?" "Don't know." The Dean of Studies was about to faint, glaring intently at Xia Jiujia instead. "What about you?" Xia Jiujia contemplated it. Shenxi had ended up in this situation because of him, so if he wanted to play around, let him. Hence, Xia Jiujia sighed and softly replied, "I don't know either." Shenxi turned to look at Xia Jiujia's face. At #UN%, and asterisk, at #UN%, and asterisk, the Dean of Studies cursed them a bit, but didn't actually make a big deal out of the jumping over the wall incident. At the end, he pointed at Shenxi's back and shouted, "You're nothing but a delinquent." After circumventing a quarter circle of the playground and entering the teaching building, before they even stepped into the classroom of grade 1, class 6, something else happened. An unknown individual saw Xia Jiujia brawling and directly reported to the dean of the entire grade 1 of our middle school. During evening study sessions at our middle school, homeroom teachers generally aren't present. The dean blocked the entrance and asked Xia Jiujia to come to the office to explain the situation. Xia Jiujia asked, "What about evening study?" "It doesn't matter to miss it for a while." "Hold on," Shenxi said, "I'll go with you." "You will go with me?" "Yeah. I am an eyewitness, and also a participant." "All right then." At the dean's office, Shenxi immediately explained everything. For the last time, Xia Jiujia didn't show up for the fight, instead reporting it to the teacher. Today, those guys sought revenge on him. It was entirely self-defense, and I helped him fight them. They were a bunch of hoodlums, you really don't know yet. Xia Jiujia was neither humble nor arrogant, gently recounting the entire incident with a very convincing attitude. Xia Jiujia's account was clear and orderly. Shenxi listened quietly throughout, occasionally adding in agreement, "Yes, absolutely," creating an atmosphere of complete accord that left no room for contradiction. Shenxi ranked first in the grade. Strangely, while his homeroom teacher and Chinese teacher mysteriously admired his rebellious literary talent, the English teacher found him annoying, the math teacher despised him, the physics teacher couldn't stand him, the chemistry teacher was frustrated by him, the geography teacher criticized him, the history teacher also disapproved of him. Despite all this, he still managed to be the top student in the grade. The dean didn't recognize Shenxi, but the grade 1 head teacher had met him before. With the number 1 student in the grade testifying, the teachers really couldn't do anything. After all, it would be absurd to criticize Shenxi just for some troublemakers. Thus, the matter was set aside. They returned to evening study sessions. Shenxi's head hung low, as he slowly ate the chicken strips with a toothpick, piece by piece. So much had happened this evening. Crystal Jelly taking down the hoodlums, helping a little girl, behaving both fiercely and tenderly like a big wolf dog then turning into a little puppy, remarkably magical. And yet, upon reflection, only an hour had passed. But still, something seemed to be shifting. It felt like when a drop of dye suddenly falls into a bowl, gradually spreading its colors, tinting the previously clear water with a touch of splendor. The English teacher read out the sentences slowly, her melodic voice resonating within the classroom. She said, in this sentence. She fell asleep during the meeting. Here, fall asleep means to fall into sleep. Fall plus a state indicates someone entering a certain condition. Fall ill means getting sick. Fall behind means lagging. Fall apart means breaking down. Can anyone give another example? Shenxi sat there unconsciously, staring at the English teacher. Teacher Yangwan always thought if a student looked up at her during class, it meant they wanted to answer the question. She was quite considerate, always willing to grant students their wishes. Therefore, hardly anyone dared look up at the teacher, instead focusing intently on their textbooks, except Shenxi, who continued gazing straight ahead. Knowing Shenxi was the top student, Miss Yang immediately addressed the handsome boy, saying, "Shenxi, can you give us an example?" Shenxi blinked in surprise. What? Miss Yang explained, "I just mentioned that fall plus a state implies someone entering a certain condition, like fall asleep meaning sleeping, fall ill indicating illness, fall behind showing lagging, fall apart meaning breaking down. Now it's your turn to provide an example." Still dazed, Shenxi, despite being renowned as our middle school's academic prodigy, could not think of any proper examples. Instead, the phrase that had randomly popped into his mind and lingered stubbornly there finally escaped his lips, fall in love. Good. Yangwan turned to face the whole class again, fall in love, meaning to fall in love. Now similarly, we have get plus past participle. Get plus past participle is almost the same as be plus past participle, but usually, be plus past participle denotes general action, whereas get plus past participle refers more to changing states. For instance, get dressed. Who else can provide another example? Once more, only Shen-shi stared blankly at teacher Yangwan. Recognizing his intent gaze, Miss Yang called on him again, Shen-shi. Gathering his thoughts for a long time without coming up with anything, Shen-shi finally blurted out after a moment of hesitation, get married. Fine. Get married, meaning getting married. Throughout 2 English periods, Shen-shi remained lost in a peculiar mood. As those around him packed their bags to leave swiftly, shouting, Bro Shen, goodbye. Because of the short evening hours, everyone rushed back to the dormitory for fun. Meanwhile, Shen-shi extended his legs leisurely and silently sipped the milk tea that, Crystal Jelly, bought for him, slowly, sip by sip. Xia Jiujia hadn't gone either, focused on double-checking problems. His intention was to finish all homework before heading back to the dormitory. He never studied late into the night or practiced extra questions, preferring to read miscellaneous books once back in the dorm. Other classmates who hadn't left were scattered sparsely across the classroom. Shen-shi drank his milk tea listlessly. Suddenly, a pearl got stuck in the straw. He struggled for a long time but still couldn't suck it up. Stubborn. It seemed impossible to get it through sucking. Frowning, Shen-shi decided, blowing was the only option left. It wasn't easy to blow with force inside the plastic cup, and he didn't have much room to maneuver. So Shen-shi took the straw out of the cup, puffed his cheeks, gathered all his strength, and with a huff, blew as if firing a cannon. Immediately, the pearl was propelled out forcefully. The pearl shot straight out, sticking to the back of Xia Jiujia's white school uniform shirt right in front of Shen-shi. Shen-shi froze. The black pearl, freshly removed from the milk tea, shone brightly and clung precariously to the white fabric, like a precious stone drawing attention against the snowy background. Clearly, this wouldn't do. Shen-shi gently reached out and carefully plucked the pearl off Xia Jiujia's shirt. In between his thumb and forefinger, it felt hot, almost burning. Shen-shi stared at it for a while, as if spellbound. He glanced around to ensure none of his classmates were paying attention, then slowly placed the pearl between his lips, pressing it firmly with his tongue, and began chewing meticulously before swallowing. A subtle pleasure accompanied this secret act. Chapter 8 Competition, 2.